Hi, my name is Justin Waldman, he, him. I'm the artistic director here at Two River Theater, and welcome to In the Know tonight with our great guest, Kate Hamill. Kate Hamill, playwright, actor extraordinaire. We're so excited to have Kate here for the world premiere of her play, The Scarlet Letter, which is on stage and opens on Friday. I'm going to embarrass Kate a little bit and give
Oh my God.
talk about some of the amazing things that she has done in her illustrious career. So Kate is a playwright and an actress. She has been one of the most produced playwrights nationwide every season from 2017 until now. She is deeply passionate about creating new feminist, female-centered classics, both in new plays and adaptation, and stories that center around complicated women. Her plays include, in the places where they premiered, are Pride and Prejudice at primary stages, Sense and Sensibility at Bedlam, Vanity Fair at the Pearl, Mansfield Park at Northlight, Little Women at primary stages in the Jungle, Dracula at Classic Stage Company, Mrs. Holmes and Mrs. Watson at Department 2B at Kansas City Rep. Did I get that right? Emma at the Guthrie, The Little Fellow at Signet Theater, and her plays have been produced off-Broadway and regionally at ART, the Guthrie, Seattle Rep, Alley, Folger, OSF, just name it, they've done it. She's been pretty much everywhere in this country that matters, because she matters. She is also an accomplished actress. She has both acted in her own work and in other people's work. She originated the roles of Lizzie in her Pride and Prejudice, Marianne in Sense and Sensibility, Becky in Vanity Fair, and her additional acting credits include Syracuse Stage, Bedlam, Hudson Valley Shakespeare, Primary Stages, and many, many more. She is a multi-award winner, including being named the Wall Street Journal's Playwright of the Year in 2017. She's been honored with the Einhorn Award, Off-Broadway Alliance Awards, nominated for Drama League Awards, and Critics' Picks in pretty much every city in the United States. She has many shows coming up in this year. In addition to this, she has Emma at the Denver Center and The Light in the Dark world premiere at the Chautauqua Theater Festival. She has a BFA in acting from the Ithaca College, and she is truly a wonderful, amazing, gracious, kind collaborator, and we are so proud to have her at Two River Theater. Everybody, Kate Hamill.
That was very nice and very embarrassing. Thank you. Very, very
Like
nice.
many artists, Kate is hard to take compliments.
It's really hard.
But she deserves many, so we do it anyway. So one of the things I love to ask when I start is like, how did you get into theater? Like, what got the bug started for you?
I was a very high energy child. I was a high energy small child. I'm a high energy small adult. I was one of 6 kids. I'm number 5 of 6, so I probably was looking for some way to get attention. And I grew up in upstate New York in a very, very small farm town called Lansing. There's no reason why you would know of it. It's a lovely town. And there was a woman there who ran sort of like the school plays out of our teeny tiny little school. Her name was Cynthia Howell, and she asked me to be in a school play, and I just fell madly in love with it. And I think it enabled me to find a level of connection and catharsis that I still find when I see really great stuff and when I work with people on stuff. And that is how it started. And then I went and spent a lot of money to get a BFA in it, and then I did some things. Yes.
So acting came first.
Acting came first. Yeah. I had always written a little bit, and in fact, I had no formal training in playwriting. I got my BFA in acting, and I came to the city and I was working just as an actor, and I was a feminist even before I was interested in theater. I was the only 11-year-old with a subscription to Ms. Magazine. And at the time when I got out of college, which was like, and I was working as an actor, I was doing okay. I was working in New York City and kind of doing the thing. And I was really frustrated because I felt like a lot of stories were very filtered through the male gaze. So I was always auditioning to play someone's wife or girlfriend. And they're great roles for wives or girlfriend, but it becomes tiresome to constantly be playing the part that's like, no, don't go do that brave thing, or yes, go do that brave thing. Main character of this story, and I also went to school with a very even, inclusive group of people, and then when we got out of school, the only people who were working at that time were the white men. So I got very frustrated, and my identity as a feminist was sort of in conflict with my identity as an actor, and so I bet my friends $100 that I could write a new feminist classic, and I wrote her a check, and I had no money, so she got to cash the check if I didn't write it, and that was my first play, which was in 2014, and that was Sense and Sensibility. That was the first one.
That's amazing. So
Write checks you can't cash. That's my advice.
do you have that $100 framed somewhere?
No, she still has it. The deal was she had it, and if I didn't write it, she got to cash it.
But you don't get $100 out of the deal?
No, I believe in negative consequences.
Punitive, rather.
Yes, punitive consequences. Big believer.
Well, I'm so fascinated with people that have many skills because I have very few skills. I love that people have multiple skills. So, like, how do you marry the two in your career as a working professional actress and a very, very busy playwright?
Well, occasionally one has to just takes up more of my time. When I'm not doing a balance of them, I sort of miss the thing I'm not doing. I sort of, and that I just have to kind of make time for it. It's gotten a little bit easier over the years because I think, particularly after Lin-Miranda, people sort of got more into hybrid people. It's more normalized in the business. Scheduling can be difficult. I live out of a suitcase a lot, but I try to find a balance of it. And when I'm in my own stuff, I actually was just referencing Ghostbusters to someone. I promise this is relevant. I was saying when I'm in my own stuff, I say to directors, well, I think of the playwright as Dana and the actor is Zool. So, because at some point in Ghostbusters, there is no Dana, there is only Zool, because directors have different relationships with playwrights than they do with actors. Directors have to be able to give actors like very direct notes, and playwrights and directors are more like in conversation about things. So I tell directors, do you want to talk to Dana or do you want to talk to Zool? When I have my inevitable mental breakdown, you can talk about this. She was talking about split personalities, and that system tends to work pretty well. But I look for a balance.
So which one is the demon dog? The playwright or the actor?
The actor is the demon dog. That's the crazy one.
I was wondering, like, how does playwright Kate give actor Kate a note? And what if actress Kate doesn't like the line that you're saying?
She's very tough on her. I think it's important to, if you're in your own stuff, be super humble. And I try to work with directors that I really trust to be that outside eye. And sometimes I set challenges. I try to set challenges for myself in my own work. And sometimes I feel that I failed those challenges, but I feel like it is useful for growth. So I'm pretty hard on myself as the playwright on the actor, but I'm hard on myself. Just like I get up in the morning and I'm like, why these shoes? So that's familiar.
Well, even in your own playwriting career, you're kind of bifurcated in the adaptations that you work in, into plays that your own creations. Like, is there a different process for each? Like, how do you choose to adapt something versus write your own version of it?
Well, I come at adaptation from a new play process, so it's actually not that different. I think of adaptation, because I do sort of irreverent adaptations, they're not dramaturgically rigid, so you'll see things that are quite familiar from the book, and you'll see things that don't exist in the book. Because I feel like theater is a very fluid form. We want to say why this story, why now, and why should this story be a play? And if we're just trying to recreate the novel, everyone has the novel at home, like there's really no point. So because I come at it from a new play lens, I think of adaptation as a collaboration between myself and another author who is sometimes currently dead, like our friend Nathaniel Hawthorne. So for me, it's actually quite a similar process, except you have a little bit more freedom in new plays, because if I all of a sudden at the end of the Scarlet Letter went and a meteor comes on stage and they all die, everyone would be a little bit upset at me. Whereas in a new play, there sort of are no rules, but I enjoy an adaptation. People come in with a lot of feelings about the source material, so you can it's very fertile playground to play in. Sometimes and people have all sorts of reactions to the plays, but I actually think it's good to write something that people already feel passionate about. It's useful.
And so when you're working on it, since Scarlet Letter is an adaptation, like when you're working on it, how many times do you read the book? Do you lay it out on a bullet point? How much research do you do into the period? What is it like to get into the world that was created in that conversation with another artist?
I'm sort of a big believer in every play teaches you to write itself. I don't have a set process. Normally I start reading the book and I start jotting down sort of things that come to me in the margins. And then I do a ton of research, because I always feel like it's really important to understand the world of the play. So for this play, I did a bunch of research into Massachusetts Bay Colony, a bunch of research into religious cults, which basically the Puritans were, spoiler alert, a bunch of research into periods just before and after this play. So both when about the Mayflower and the Pilgrims first coming over, and about the Salem witch trials, because the events of this play are really building towards an environment where women and some men are actually hanged because of the power of the fear of them having some agency. So I thought that was very important. And then I just sort of make an outline and start writing. And I feel like where it really comes together, this was an unusual play because I wrote part of it on, there's a residency called the Hedgebrook Residency, where they take you and they put you in the woods in the middle of the night and you're not allowed any Wi-Fi for 10 days. And it was great. It's an awesome residency. I love them and they feed you and it's wonderful. It was a great place to write this because it was super freaky and witchy, but also because I was very isolated. I wrote it in 5 days. I had no Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is my greatest distraction. So this one was fast. I wrote the first draft in 5 days, I think, and then you workshop it and you write and write and write and write, and the rewriting process, which in many ways takes longer than the play, that is ongoing. The poor actors, I'm making changes tonight, spoiler alert, that just goes until opening and ultimately until publication.
Mm-hmm. And so in that process, before that even began, what was the idea? What sparked, hey, you know what? Scarlet Letter is next. That's what I got to do. Why that play? Why that book? And why make that a play now? And what makes it so relevant right now in 2024?
Well, I came up with the idea to write this play in 2016. I woke up in November 2016, and I decided I wanted to write a play about that explored the history of the strain of sort of violent misogyny in America and violent fear of the other, and a play that was about how one of the cultural legacies from the Puritans is this need, a fear of female sexuality and a need to control a woman's body and her choices about her body. So A, and B, once I started writing the play, I got very, very interested in the idea of forgiveness. Again, light spoiler. This play starts with an act of by the state, which is historically accurate, what they did to women for committing adultery in Massachusetts Bay Colony. And everyone in this play spends the rest of the play trying to deal with not only the sort of fear of Hester Prynne and her illegitimate child and how that quote unquote immorality can quote unquote infect their society, but also this act of the state to punish this woman's choice. And I was very interested in how people try to find forgiveness. We as a society, and this is also sort of inherited from the Puritans, I would argue, we're not great at finding paths to forgiveness and redemption in our society. If you've done something bad and you've been cast out, we're not great at prescribing how you can be forgiven for it. And that is also, an open question for people who are very religious, as the Puritans were. But the Puritans also believed in predestination. So they believed if bad things were happening to you, God wanted them to happen to you because you were being so sinful. So I got very interested in those ideas, and I'm someone who does ask myself a lot, well, how can we have how can we find forgiveness, and how can we find forgiveness for ourselves? So that became what part of this play was about.
Excellent. Thank you for that. With all the thematic and morality issues of the piece, there's also a very difficult theatrical, practical piece of the book.
Yes.
Who you mentioned, her name is Pearl, as a 4-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. There aren't a lot of great 4-year-old actresses running around. No. Mostly they don't know how to tie their shoes. But so you've done it in a lot of different ways. You've approached this in different workshops with different ways of trying to solve the problem. And then we have a very theatrical version of that solution here. Yes. Can you talk a little bit about the ways that you tried to try it, and then what we've done and why that is being successful? Yes.
So I tried it. I mean, this play was workshopped a couple of times at various lovely theaters. It was one of the it originally was slated for world premiere at a different theater in 2020. And obviously we didn't make much theater in 2020. And that version did not have a puppet in it. And I just felt like the more I went and took a puppet class with a lovely man named Eric Wright from the Puppet Kitchen. Shout out to the Puppet Kitchen. The more I learned about puppets, the more I was interested in the puppet as a theatrical device. Even if we could find the sort of latter-day Haley Joel Osment to 4-year-old girls, labor laws make it really difficult actually to cast little kids in things. That kid really doesn't exist in the world. Pearl has a big thing. And the Puritans would have believed that Pearl was kind of creepy. They believed that a child born of sin had sin within her nature. And if a little kid ran out here, we as modern people would just think she was cute and innocent. But puppets are a little otherworldly. They're a little creepy. They're a little bit alive and a little bit dead. So I thought that was a great thing. And when Shelley Butler, who directed this piece and co-runs a theater festival called the South Carolina New Play Festival, picked up this piece and she did a reading of it down there. And when we first talked about it, I said, I think if I'm rethinking this piece, I really just only want to do it with a puppet. And she was super on board. And then Shelley is friends with Justin and brought it to River Theater. And Two River really supported that idea, which is so wonderful and such actually a big undertaking. You'd think a puppet is just a puppet, but puppets are actually a huge undertaking for a theater and a big leap of faith because they're very theatrical. They have a lot of specific puppet requirements. And so I'm super grateful to Shelley and to Justin and to everyone at Two River for really embracing this idea. We had a puppet-specific workshop with James Ortiz, who's our puppet designer, and Will Gallagher, who's our puppet coach, and Nikki Kalanghe, who is our actor/puppeteer who plays Pearl. And that was invaluable and actually was proof of concept for this. And it has been really wonderful. Like all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, suddenly Pearl was playing the function in the play that I had hoped.
So when you first saw her, what did you think? What was your first reaction?
Oh my God. So Pearl is a little bit based on some children I have known, and at least one child I was. She's a little bit based on me as a kid, which is, I was a little feral. She's a little bit based on one of my nieces, who I love very much, and who is just such a delightful oddball. She is a little bit based on a little girl I used to nanny at about that age. And when I saw this puppet design, I was like, oh my God. I mean, it looks like all those kids I know, and yet it also looks, we were very interested in creating Pearl is the only character in the play who is born in what we now know as America. So she is in conversation with this world, in this land, in a way that none of these other characters are. And she had all that wildness and all of that puppet otherworldliness, but also was a little girl. And I remember gasping, and I sort of had a picture of her in my mind and made some doodle of her, and she looks sort of like the doodle of the fantasy of Pearl that I had in my mind. And also, James did this, again, who's our puppet designer, who's great, did such amazing detail work, because once we cast the two actors, Amelia Pedlow and Shelley Butler, oh my God, spoiler, if you don't know, it's a 200-year-old book, I'm so sorry, who are playing the parents of this puppet. James actually modified this puppet, so in some ways it looks like both of them, but also ambiguous enough so you don't know who the father is. Yes, spoiler, it's a 200-year-old book. We don't.
Hard to bury that.
Hard to bury that lead. We know.
It was so funny as you speak of Farrell. I've been telling this story. There's a moment in the piece where Pearl walks into the governor's house and goes, "This stinks. It stinks." And I was at an open house over the weekend with my 7-year-old son, and he walked in the place like, "This place is weird." I'm like, and she nailed it. This feral Muppet running around. So we had some questions from social media, which is awesome, that came in over our Instagram feed. So I'd like to ask you a couple of these before I open it up to questions from all of you. Okay. One is, what is your favorite memory from rehearsal?
I think it's the days when we started, when we got away from table work is the first week of rehearsal. That's where you sit around the table and you read it and you just do the play. And when we started working with the actors on their feet, that's always one of my favorite days. But I think my favorite day was when I got to see Amelia Pedlow, again, who plays Hester, and Nikki Kalanghe, who plays Pearl, interact as mother and child. And you'll notice as you watch the play, you stop watching Nikki, who's a brilliant actor and puppeteer, and you start watching the puppet. You start forgetting that she's a puppet and you're just watching this mother and child. And, I'm specifically looking to, when you're working on a play, you're kind of looking for holes and blind spots. And I was forgetting, and that was pretty magical. Like the first time Amelia picked her up, we had this 45-pound practice weight, so we could approximate. Puppets obviously are much lighter than that. Amelia had practiced with the practice weight, and then she picked up the kid with this very convincing, because the kid's getting a little bit big to get picked up, and I went, oh, that's really satisfying. It really, I forgot it was a puppet. I felt like a kid.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, they're hard to pick up.
Yeah.
Because most of them are. And do you have any advice for people with writer's block?
Besides
changing gears.
Besides write a check that you can't cash. That you can't have cash. I do find it's really helpful to have a deadline. So I do like to get an external deadline of some kind, because otherwise it's so easy to procrastinate. So that if that can be with an organization, or if you can find a writing group, or if you just have a friend who will really not let you off the hook, that's really helpful. The other tip I would have is don't try to edit as you write. Like, all of us write a certain percentage of bad things. Sometimes you just have to write all the bad things before you find a germ of the good. Write it all out, don't worry about it, and then put it aside and take a nap, basically, before you think about it. Because so often when I'm writing, I think, well, this is the dumbest part of the play. No one's ever going to do this scene with 1,000 fart jokes. I'm just sort of trying to get through it. And then that inevitably ends up staying in the play. True story.
And if you're waiting for the fart scene in The Scarlet Letter, you're going to have to wait a little longer. That's a different play.
I just made that joke today with our sound designer, Kate Marvin. I just said, what if there were farts? And she was like, we need to stop working on this play.
I think we're done. I think we're done.
Yeah.
Let me open it up to questions from all of you. And I'll hear it, I'll repeat it to make sure that we get it into the feed. Hawthorne, for everyone who can hear, so Hawthorne had a subtitle on the play on the book called A Romance. And if you had a subtitle for yours, would it be the same or would it be different?
What a good question. I guess I would say a kind of parable. Yeah, it's sort of, and on the one hand, it's just about these people, and on the other hand, it's about a lot of, thoughts about how people find forgiveness and for themselves. So it's a kind of parable. That would be thank you. That was amazing.
Yes, sir. So the way that with Hawthorne writing the play in a different era from what he set it in, and now you writing an adaptation of the piece in a different era from which he wrote it in,
Yes.
How do those three eras, the Puritan era and Enlightenment era and the 21st century, converse with one another? Is that fair?
That's perfect.
That's also such an interesting question. I mean, I feel like Hawthorne, because he was expunging some of his own guilt. So one of Hawthorne's ancestors was a judge during the Salem witch trial, as you say. So he, writing it almost 2 centuries later, was exploring a lot of his own guilt. And that's a very universal theme. So when I, as a playwright, am trying to talk to a modern audience, in some ways I'm trying to get you to feel the feelings that these characters are feeling. This is a play without a villain. People do terrible things to each other, but I don't think any of them are evil, really. I'm a Roger Chillingworth apologist. I really am. So, yeah, in some ways, I'm trying to evoke the same feelings that Hawthorne was evoking. And that, to me, is where some of adaptation comes in, is I'm trying to construct circumstances that make us all explore themes in a way that feels really urgent and necessary. Because if you're watching a play that just feels like, well, that's about people from a long time ago and it's not about me, it's a little abstract. We could all stay at home in our jammies and watch the History Channel. I think Hawthorne was asking himself as a transcendentalist, well, the same thing most of authors do, which is why this story, why now? And certainly as a playwright, I'm asking why this story, why now? And when the space aliens write a draft 200 years from now, I'm sure they'll be asking. So that's a sort of Byzantine answers to that, but I think I am often trying to evoke the same feelings, and sometimes those take slightly different events. That's why this play starts out with in a dramaturgically accurate an act of violence, because I thought it's really hard for us to understand how much guilt and shame they're feeling over standing there beautifully on a scaffold wearing a letter. I mean, we kind of don't get it. But an act of violence, which again, dramaturgically accurate, they actually did that to women in Massachusetts Bay Colony who were accused of adultery. That actually we can feel some of those feelings in a more visceral way. Yeah.
In trying to represent feminism, are you trying to do it within the context of the piece or in the context of a modern ethos? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I feel like feminism, like any ism, is always evolving, and none of us is perfect at practicing said ideological practice. So I often am skewing more towards modern questions with the understanding of the limits of the given circumstance. So in like Pride and Prejudice, I'm asking a question. I often base a play around a thematic question. So the theme of, and it has to be something that feels really personal and relevant to me. And one of those, as well as socially relevant, and one of the question was, well, how do you know if you found the perfect match? I was interested in creating characters, and that especially in that time period for Pride and Prejudice, who you match with as a woman of that period determines like your whole destiny, basically your whole life. So I was interested in exploring that. And in terms of, for me, the feminism often comes in what kinds of stories I'm trying to explore, and less about, and not that I think you're saying this, less about people who are like embodying perfect ideals, but who are actually like asking the questions. And in that way, I feel very connected to like a proto-feminist like Jane Austen, who Jane Austen is talking about the internal life versus the external life and how you navigate life in a patriarchal society. The same with Hester Prynne. Like Hester Prynne, I don't think is going to go out and campaign for the ERA. You know, she's not like really, you know, like, can I say she's a feminist? No. Or does she represent feminist ideals? Not really, but it is feminist for me to explore that character who is a revolutionary woman in her own way. So sometimes, yeah, it's often like trying to ask feminists, not even, trying to ask questions that I feel are relevant to the role of like gender roles in our society. That's often what I'm trying to do. And other stuff. And there are lots of silly jokes and stuff too.
I think we have time for one last question. What's a great piece of advice for people who want to write a full-length play?
First of all, welcome. If you write any lines of dialogue, you're a playwright. You are welcome. Yay. I look forward to seeing your plays. It's a good question how to go from scenes to a full-length play. I try to find really big questions and try to do an outline based on those really big questions after I create a bunch of characters and put them in a room together. And sometimes I get about 3 scenes in and I'm like, I have nothing. And sometimes I have to put it away and that eventually will be something. And sometimes it comes out to a play. The good news is you are asking the same question that all playwrights have, you know, asked themselves since Aeschylus. That's just what playwrights do. I think it's about like, it's great to build practice with the shorter things and then just challenge yourself. Okay, what's a story I can write that's so big that I need a minimum of 60 pages to write it? And I would say, like, don't be afraid to do something insanely big to start, and then like write a play about the, I don't know, the birth of the universe. And then it'll feel less daunting to go back. But yeah, welcome. These are the same. I mean, every day I'm like, how can I write a whole play about that? Or I'm like an overwriter, so actually my thing is more like, how can I only write a 2-hour play about that? Why aren't plays 8 hours long? Yeah.
Well, luckily, Scarlet Letter is 90 minutes.
It's a fast 90 minutes.
For all of you, well, who's seeing the show tonight? How many people are seeing the show tonight? Oh my God.
Wow.
Well, we have to get you out of here so you can go see that and maybe, grab a snack or a drink before you go. I want to thank Kate Hamill for her amazing words, amazing wisdom. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with us. A huge thanks to our amazing team here at Two River, our marketing team, Hannah and Heather, who are around, our great Dan Montano on sound. That's why you can hear us. Julia, who set up this room. It's really special. It takes so many people to make this happen. So if I missed anybody, I'm so sorry. Thanks to Kate and the whole education department for bringing the Loves Labors team. And thanks to all of you for coming out on a Wednesday night and enjoying some time with us at the theater.
Thank you.
Scarlet Letter opens this weekend and runs through February 25th. We hope to see you there.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.